Good day, everybody. Welcome to the morning meeting. Thank you for joining and being part of Two Way. Grateful to have you here. I have two big stories to talk to you about, and then some others as well. Shooting in Washington, D.C. We'll talk a great deal about that, of two young, innocent people, and the passage a few hours ago of the reconciliation bill. And we'll talk about not only how that happened, but going forward, what's happening next. We always try to be forward looking here. Talk also about the president's event today with Maha, Bobby Kennedy, unveiling a report. We'll talk about that. And also, president's having dinner tonight with some people who helped make him even richer. We'll talk about that. Mercedes Schlapp is here filling in for Sean, and Ms. Mercedes, Dan, and I will run through it. As always, we'll love for your questions to be part of this. So if you want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand. If you're here on the two-way platform, if you're watching on X or YouTube, I hope today is not a day when I need to remind you not to put smack in the chat, but I will anyway. So please don't do that. Other stuff coming up today for you to watch for on two way tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern time, and it back to its normal time live on the two-way platform and on YouTube. I will be joined by my new colleagues here, one old colleague, Dan, but the five
Very
members
well.
of the quintet of the Fabulous Five who are hosts of a new show called The Group Chat that is premiering on two-way next week. A little bit of an opportunity tonight to meet these five. And it's a panel show, but it's a panel show with a two-way twist. You'll be able to participate with them in the conversation as they run through the news of the day each Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And just like you do here, you'll get a chance to raise your hand to be part of the conversation. We'll talk more about that. And again, all five of them will join tonight. Moynihan Report at 7 o'clock tonight. Documentary filmmaker Nick August Perna will be Michael's guest. Again, that streams live on the two-way platform and on YouTube at 7 Eastern. And later today, my new episode of Next Up on the Megyn Kelly Network will debut on YouTube. And as a podcast, my guest will be Tom Cotton, senator from Arkansas, who will have lots to say about Russia, Ukraine, China, and of course today's last night's shootings. And Megyn herself. I've never interviewed Megyn Kelly. I've been interviewed by Megyn Kelly, but Megyn will be my guest to talk about what's going on in the world, including her interview earlier this week with the authors of that new book. Mercedes, welcome. Thank you for being part of Two Way.
It's great to be here. I'm a little bit on Cuban time. Sorry, I was a little late.
Yeah,
I just got off the
that's
radio.
okay.
So
Yeah,
Yeah. How was Larry? He was
how's
here yesterday.
Larry is great, but I had to go put some lipstick on so I don't look like, my morning self, which I'm successfully showing right now.
did
So
did
great
did
to be on with everyone.
we're really
He set
happy.
a low bar. Don't worry.
Yeah, happy to have you here. Did Larry give you any pointers about how to do this show?
No, he was trying to be like, Mercy, if you're not going to do the show, I'll just sub for you. So he was so trying to kick me off the show, Mark,
Yeah,
that he wanted to be the one hosting today. Just so
yeah.
you know,
Well,
just be careful.
Very
He might be
subtle.
trying
un,
to, take over the whole show at this point.
understood. Maybe he'll just call in the regular way. CBS is reporting that there's been a shooting at the CIA. CIA security shot a female driver who approached the gate at the headquarters and failed to stop. We'll see what more we learn there. All right. Um, Run through the schedule, and there'll be lots of things happening today that aren't on the schedule in reaction to the shooting, of course. But let's run through what's on the announced schedule. The president has a kind of an interesting schedule today, I would say. White House pool call time 9 a.m. 11 o'clock. He gets his intel briefing. 12:30 lunch with Vice President Vance, Mercedes' former neighbor. Then
That's
uh,
great.
then at 3:45, Bobby Kennedy, Secretary Kennedy, is at the White House for the MAGA Commission report release. And then in the evening, the president goes to a private dinner for people who have invested in his crypto scheme. I'll call it a scheme, but I might mean it in the British sense, so I might mean it innocently. And has the dinner there and then heads back to the White House. And Caroline Levitt briefs at 1. All right. Vice President, I don't know what he's doing today. Congress, there's little hearings going on, but most of what will happen on the Hill will be the aftermath of the passage of reconciliation, which we'll talk about in a minute. But first, let's talk about the shooting. There's lots to say, and as always with these stories, don't want to get ahead of the known facts. A lot of people jumping to a lot of conclusions. but I don't think anybody doubts that Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram were killed for because they were Jewish. And as several people have pointed out to me this morning, is not any reason to think that the alleged shooter knew they were from the embassy, but he did know that they were part of an event celebrating Judaism and Jewish life. So again, there's a lot we could say. A few things I want to show you before we start talking about it. This is the shooter himself, alleged shooter, Elias Rodriguez, after he was taken into custody and brought into the facility where the event was held. This is 106, please.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
That's what he's yelling shortly after he took the lives of two young people. Pretty aggressive and I thought very professional and reassuring response from local and federal law enforcement. If you were up as Dan and I were watching basketball, you may have been up also watching these events that took place in the evening. Here is the Attorney General and the Assistant FBI Director, 107, please.
We'll be doing everything in our power to keep all citizens safe, especially tonight our Jewish community. We will follow the facts, we will follow the law, and this defendant, if charged, will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Tonight, a heinous crime was committed, and the FBI stands with the Metropolitan Police Department to help not only investigate the homicide and provide support, but also to look into ties to potential terrorism or motivation based on a bias-based crime or a hate crime.
Lots of responses to the president on Truth Social, lots of people on X, including Marco Rubio and others from the administration, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and of course, many Israeli officials responded. We couldn't show you all of them because obviously many people have responded. Doug Emhoff tweeted, want to show you one. This is AOC 109, please, on Twitter, which I was pleased to see, I will say. Absolutely nothing justified the murder of innocents. I'm devastated by the killing of two people outside an AGC global event here in Washington. Our prayers are with the victims' families and loved ones of all impacted. As we await more details, we must be clear that hatred has no home here. Anti-Semitism is a threat to all we hold dear as a society. It must be confronted and rooted out everywhere. Very glad to see that. So, Mercedes, I want to start with you on just the process question. You worked in the Trump administration, so in a communications role. What happens, particularly regarding the president, when there's an event like this, in terms of briefing, in terms of communication strategy? How would that have unfolded, and how will you think that will unfold today?
Well, I think obviously he was most likely briefed by the Department of Justice, by the FBI. They moved very quickly in terms of a response. And, you know, President Trump, the one thing that we know is that he's his own communicator. So he would be the one quickly to, call Dan Scavino or one of his top staffers and say, hey, put this tweet out or put this X post out or truth post out, I should say, on his account. And then obviously with Pam Bondi living very close to where I think the incident happened, she went down to the press conference. So look, they activated quickly. They responded quickly. This coming from the FBI. But this, I think, Mark, speaks to a broader issue here, which is the fact that this anti-Semitism is going beyond these college campuses, right? It started with pro sympathizers of Hamas in the college campuses, with the encampments, with bullying Jewish students, to now the death of two innocent Israeli embassy staffers. And clearly what you're seeing with Elias Rodriguez, he's part of the Party of Socialism and Liberation, a communist party. He's been involved in other protests like BLM, and now taking these violent actions, I think is taking this issue of combating anti-Semitism. I mean, it's going to be taken to a whole different level. I mean, this just shows you that these Hamas sympathizers have infiltrated American society, and it's an issue that we're facing here in America, but also in the globe.
So, Dan, there's The issue of gun control has not come up yet that I have seen, but it will once we determine how he got the weapon. The issue of anti-Israel movements in the United States. Those are two things that will come up, and those are divisive and partisan issues, polarizing issues. So far, again, if there's a silver lining in this horrible event, almost everybody's saying the same thing. We need to harden targets. There needs to be more security. That's an unfortunate reality. And that this is a manifestation of anti-Semitism. So where do you think we are now? Where do you think we head?
Yeah, I think I was really happy to see AOC put the post up that she did. I think, Mercedes hit on it a little bit. There has been a rise in anti-Semitism in this country now for the last 2 years. And it is one thing for people to protest for the outcome of a conflict, right? To wave a flag or whatnot. But the kind of intimidation and some violence, I'm not even talking about this incident of a shooting, but it has kind of become somewhat accepted in parts of our country that, hey, these people are frustrated and they have, they're expressing themselves, and it's a little bit of kind of like good trouble, but it's not. And obviously, where I live here in New York City, this is a huge topic. People's children don't feel safe. There's, swastikas are put on subway stations, on school doors. And I wish the Democratic Party was more direct in saying that is not okay. It's fine to protest, but you cannot try to intimidate people, harm property or people, and good God, obviously, not murder somebody. It's just not acceptable. So hopefully this is a moment for some parts of the Democratic Party to sober up a little, to say, we need to be crystal clear in what is okay and what is not. And I think, unfortunately, the 2024, the party waffled a little bit on that.
So there's so much reaction, obviously, in Israel. I've been monitoring it this morning, and I didn't put up the pictures of the two victims because I'm going to cry enough during the episode without that. But I'm just seeing it somewhere else. At least two weird things going on between Israel and the United States right now. There's some reporting on it, but it's pretty opaque. One is Benjamin Netanyahu under pressure to increase humanitarian aid as he makes it clear that he's going to go back into Gaza with military force, and that's underway. So that's and what the Europeans have been pressuring Netanyahu to do more on aid, humanitarian aid, and what President Trump's posture towards that is not clear to me. It's not clear based on the public statements. And of course, he skipped Israel on his trip. The other thing is, it's being reported by Axios and others that the Israelis' intention, if the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks fall apart, which they could, is to finally, after more than a decade, probably 2 decades of speculation, that Israel allegedly is prepared now to engage in a military strike against Iran to try to take out their nuclear capability. I can't help but think that this tragedy is going to somehow impact what's going on. And I say this just as a matter of fact. I'm not denigrating him. I'm sure Prime Minister Netanyahu sees leverage in this. That'd be my guess. So, Mercedes, how do you think the tragedy will impact what's going on now in Gaza and what's going on with Iran?
Well, interestingly enough, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu basically said that he's going to look to beef security up in the missions, number one. Number two, I do think President Trump and his team, they are not necessarily in favor of military expansion into or these actions into Gaza. And I know that they are not in favor of Israel moving forward with any sort of preemptive strikes in Iran either, especially as President Trump, coming off of his Middle East trip, made that gesture towards Iran saying, hey, let's make a deal. So I think that they will, although this is a huge tragedy and it might shift a little bit in terms of basically supporting Benjamin Netanyahu, I still think the Trump administration is seeing this as a huge American problem right now that's festering in our college campuses, that is festering with these groups like Mahmoud Khalil, who obviously help organize the Palestinian students up in Columbia University. So I think their focus will be more on how do we keep revoking student visas? How do we break these student groups, and who's funding these student groups that basically hone in and target Jewish students? And how are you going to fortify, for example, synagogues and places where the Jewish people come together? I think those are going to be very serious conversations that the administration is going to have. But I'm going to say one thing, Dan, with all due respect. I mean, this idea of applauding AOC. I mean, the squad in and of itself, their language has been so anti-Israel, death to Israel. So I think just dangerous rhetoric that they have pushed through, in no way trying to solve this problem that we've seen. So I find, I would wish that the Democrat Party and the squad would watch that 20 and 40-minute video that has been put together by the Israeli government showing the body cams of these Hamas terrorists who burned innocent women, children, grandparents alive. Matt and I were at the International Conference for combating anti-Semitism in Israel. We went down. We were about 1.2 miles from Gaza. We met with many of these survivors, these families of October 7th. We watched those videos of these innocent young women and men and babies being burned to death. And you listen to what they say, and that you hear these Hamas soldiers basically calling their parents saying, I killed 20 Jews, praise Allah. That is barbaric. That is completely unacceptable. And it just shows that their whole goal has been to kill off as many Jewish people as possible. And so when it comes to this humanitarian aid, we got to make sure it gets to the people, which we know for a fact that these terrorists take a huge chunk of this humanitarian aid, which has been an ongoing problem for quite some time.
Dan, let me just say one thing if I could. And Mercedes, if I misinterpreted what you said, I apologize in advance, and I'll say I'm reacting to what you said, not responding.
Just don't cry on me, okay? I can't handle you crying. I'm just not used to it.
I got a monitor this off to the side, and they keep showing a picture of those two
Oh yeah.
beautiful young
No,
people.
it's horrific.
Anyway, so this is my general philosophy, and it's a philosophy of this program and of two-way peace, love, and understanding. What I would prefer that people on the right do, people who love Israel, support Israel, is not read AOC's tweet and say, well, look at what she's done in the past, or look at what she didn't say in the tweet. My preference would be to say, that's great. It's great. And we welcome her into the part of America that is so outraged by what happens that we express the outrage and we express solidarity and determination. I wish she had said something supportive of Israel. It would have been my preference, but I'd rather we not falter and fly spec her statement or again recite the past actions of the squad. Let's try to use a moment of unity rather than look at what she's done in the past or how she may be falling short of perfection here. That's my.
You're just a better human being than I am.
Well, I just think
no, I see your point.
It'd be so much better. It'd be so
frustrating.
much better if she brought her supporters.
Right, of course.
Many of her supporters are chanting, are
Yes.
protesting, are
Yes.
are hostile to Israel. So I would rather have AOC help win back those people than other people than you try, because you're not going to win them back, Mercedes.
Well,
But
I'm gonna
I
say-
think the only thing I would say, Mercedes, is, and perhaps I am misinformed, I don't believe the squad has said death to Israel. I believe they've been pretty pro-Palestinian, right? Not where I am, right? Not where a lot of my neighbors on the Upper East Side are right now. But I think, look, this is an issue that separates the Democratic Party. This is an issue that, enrages people on both sides, right? I mean, we've heard it on this platform. People who come on and talk about what's the humanitarian crisis and et cetera. And you are absolutely right. What happened in Israel is unacceptable. And look, I'll be curious to see what AOC does, right? You want to be senator, you want to be president of the United States, you're going to have to, perhaps evolve in her thinking a little bit. And so I will be curious, because this is a forward-looking political show. We talk about moments sometimes. If you're thinking of running in 2028, how do you handle this? You got to win a primary to get to the general. party talks about it needs to change a little bit, needs to be more tolerant. These are leadership moments.
I do think the one place we can come to an agreement on is on a ceasefire, really trying to find that ceasefire moment between Israel and Gaza, something that has not been able to be accomplished in any way, which I think has been a challenge even for the Trump administration to try to accomplish that.
Yeah.
That I think has been one of the bigger challenges that I think it would be good for Republicans and Democrats to come together in trying to find that type of solution right now. And the question will be, Mark, to your point, and Dan, what is this tragedy? How is this going to play in these attempts of a possible ceasefire?
Yeah. I don't want to talk much about reconciliation because I actually don't think there's that much interesting to say. Contrary to the perils of Pauline, doom and gloom, Capitol Hill press corps, everything we said here was true. They passed it. 2 noes, one present, and now it's going to the Senate. And again, I keep saying all that I think is going to matter. The Senate will work its will. I don't know which ways they're going to move it, but if the House agrees to be jammed by the House of Lords, this will pass by July. And if the House decides they won't be jammed, we're in a different territory. But it's so funny reading the coverage this morning after the passage, where they say now the Capitol Hill press corps says this was always going to pass. And then when they talk about the Senate, they say, well, the Senate's going to change it substantially. So now we're back to perils of Pauline. How's it possibly going to happen? Here's Speaker Johnson first on the House floor announcing passage, and then in a celebratory post-passage press conference. 104, please.
On this vote, the yeas are 215, the nays are 214, with one answering present. The bill is passed. USA, USA.
We look forward to the Senate's timely consideration of this once-in-a-generation legislation. We stand ready to continue our work together to deliver on the one big, beautiful bill, as President Trump named it himself. We're going to send that to his desk. We're going to get it there by Independence Day on July 4th, and we are going to celebrate a new golden age in America. Thank you for being here.
So, Dan, I think Scott Bessent will magically determine that the federal government will breach the debt ceiling on July 4th or right around then, and that'll be the forcing mechanism. And the Senate will do what the Senate's going to do. But I don't think there's much to say except, it's time to stop underestimating the speaker. Time to remember that the president has control over 98% of the conference in both chambers, and they'll herd the last few cats as they need. Dan.
Yep, I completely agree with everything you said. I think the one kind of material changes, they will shrink the Medicaid cuts because you have people like Josh Hawley and others who are really uncomfortable with it. And as we've said all along, they're going to roll the Freedom Caucus. Freedom Caucus is going to salute, vote, and I July 4th, I could see him doing a signing ceremony, like on the South Lawn with the fireworks going. Absolutely.
Mercedes, dissent, agree? What are your thoughts?
I agree. I think it's actually, I'm very impressed with Speaker Mike Johnson. We just saw him this week at a CPAC event that we held. And he came up to me and he said, it's like the busiest day for me, but I came over to the event to see you all, but it was, he knew how to bring together the factions. It was bringing together New York, California on the SALT issue, basically dealing with these fiscal hawks on spending and on Medicaid. Issues that they were dealing with, and truly was able to pass the bill. It was a huge success for the speaker, and I think it was a must-do for the speaker. I do think the Senate, I could see them trying to make some shifts to the bill because while you do have the Ted Cruzes and the Mike Lees that don't love the one big beautiful bill, they know that they're going to have to get in line. I mean, we're at a point that for the president, it has to be a success. It needs to happen. It needs to show that the Republicans are marching in step with President Trump. And so I do agree that they're going to be able to work out the differences. It'll be interesting to see after it passes the Senate during the conference committee if there's going to be any other issues where, let's say, the fiscal hawks come back from the House and say this is unacceptable, there's too much spending. So it's a wait and see, but it is hopeful right now.
All right, so Medicaid, Dan mentioned Medicaid. The group American Bridge. Dan, who is American Bridge?
Yeah, that is James Carville's old group. Bradley Boychuk, my friend, runs it. They're a well-funded research operation.
Yeah, their Democratic research operation has been around a while now, and they're very aggressive. They take opposition research and they turn it into fancy press releases. And their focus in the wake of the passage of the bill, no surprise, was Medicaid. Here it is, 108A. Receipts. Vulnerable House Republicans just voted to cut Medicaid after saying they wouldn't. After hiding from the public by skipping town halls, refusing to talk to, or outright arresting concerned constituents and moving crucial hearings and votes into early morning hours to keep as few eyes on their machinations as possible. Next page. House Republicans just voted in favor of Trump's reconciliation bill that would kick millions off of 8 million off of Medicaid, etc. Karl Rove's column today in the Wall Street Journal, I recommend to you. His entire thing is Karl's advice to the White House and the Republicans on Capitol Hill about how to message what they're doing on Medicaid and say, yes, some people will lose coverage of Medicaid, but it's people who, in Karl's view, the Republicans can successfully say shouldn't be getting Medicaid, and that you shouldn't run away from the reality that yes, some people will be taken off. Mercedes, is the messaging of Medicaid the top priority now?
For the administration, you mean? Or for,
Yeah. Well, for
look,
the
I think,
Republican, in other words, do you agree with Karl that this is one of the big vulnerabilities in the House bill?
I mean, it could be a
Politically.
vulnerability. I think the reality is going into midterm elections, it's going to be where are we on the economy more than it is about Medicaid. I think it's going to be, did we lower the cost of living? Can you afford a house? Those are going to continue to be the issues. I do think that President Trump has had a huge success on the border security front, which obviously will receive funding based on this bill in terms of ICE agents and the Customs Border Patrol agents receiving the funding that they need. But I think Medicaid, it's an issue, but I don't think it ranks as one of the top political issues. And I think if you message it correctly, I mean, Republicans have never really won on this issue of Medicaid, let's be real. And it's an easy one for the Democrats to push. But the Democrats are always better at like saying, "Oh, the Republicans are cutting Medicare," and Medicare is one that really I think would set off more people because you're talking about senior voters as opposed to Medicaid. But the reality is like you want to get Medicaid back to the fact that you're slashing the fraud and the waste, and also that it's not these able-bodied adults just getting this money. And so it comes to the point that if we can't spend our way out of these problems. And it's impacting, obviously, our credit rating in the United States, the continual federal spending, and really trying to get a handle on the debt here in the United States.
Dan.
I don't think this bill gets a handle on the debt. It just adds to it. Look, I think.
No, you're right. You're right.
I mean, look,
Absolutely.
This will be a winner, I think, for Democrats in a bill that's going to have a lot of winners for Republicans. I mean, as Mercedes said, the tax cuts, the deregulation, the energy, et cetera, they'll have a lot to tout. But I think the problem is it's like with Doge. You can say we're getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. And it was a winning message until it hit the real lives of real people. And people freaked out. My Social Security calls aren't being returned. I can't get answers. And suddenly the numbers started to go down because people realized it's a great talking point, but in reality, it's hurting me. You can say there's 8 million people that are waste, fraud, and abuse on the rolls. That's ridiculous. So when you throw them off, it's going to be a problem. And if you don't believe me, look at Donald Trump, who literally said, don't blank with Medicaid, because he knows, just going back to 2015, don't touch these entitlement programs. They hurt my people.
Yeah.
So when he hurts his people, hopefully we haven't shot ourselves in the head and we can benefit from their mistake.
Mark, do you mind if I add something really quick? So
Of course.
observing I just said yes to myself. Okay. Like in the Virginia governor's race is a perfect example. Like I live in Virginia and it is going to be a difficult sell for the current Republican nominee, Winsome Sears, to make the case to federal workers like, yeah, I've got your back. And that is a huge, like in Northern Virginia, it is a big constituency group here. And the Doge thing, I think, has created a bit of the negative, implications in this Northern Virginia area that I think will actually hurt in that Virginia governor's race in terms of the Republican nominee not being able to court those voters.
I agree with that. All right, two more topics, and then we're going to get you all in. So please, please raise your hand.
I'm so glad you do.
Please raise your hand if you'd like to be in the conversation.
Peace, love, and understanding.
So, so we've talked a lot in the last couple of days about the Bidens and about not being truthful, and we've talked about Biden Inc. And now the president tonight is having this dinner, and Mercedes, even a lot of Republicans say to me, you know, Donald Trump's a billionaire. Why does he need to get rich off of trading access to him for a scheme that really is it's less substantial than selling Trump bottled water.
Right.
He's selling nothing. Would do you agree with those who say it'd just be better for the president not to do it, even though he can get away with it?
It's such a well, if look, they're going to run the legal, the legal
Well,
analysis on it to say,
they're gonna say whatever the president wants to do. They're gonna say it's legal, and it probably is legal.
well, it could be,
But
but
forget legal. Wouldn't it be better? And he can get away with it. I'm sure
yeah.
he'll get away with it. But wouldn't it be
I don't
better
know if
for
he can
him
get away with
to
it. Look, you have to understand this man was like persecuted.
uh,
When you're talking about the fact that Letitia James went after him
I'm,
for his Mar-a-Lago
but
estates.
Mercedes, you're changing the subject. The president is trading access to the White House and to himself to make money off of just like a con. He's selling nothing of value, and he's getting hundreds of
You're
millions
saying
of
crypto
dollars.
is nothing of value?
Not
You
no,
believe that?
I'm saying this crypto is nothing of
You
value.
think this crypto is nothing of value? Like
Yeah,
True Social was at some
yeah.
point, you would say, right?
Mercedes, all I
He's
want you
been
to do,
successful, and I think the key is if
all I want you,
legally he can do it.
all I want you to do is to say it would be better for him not to do it. That's
No,
all.
I'm not going to say that
Yeah.
because I think that look there. If you run it through the lawyers and the lawyers say you're allowed, you
Okay.
can
All
do
right,
this,
Mercedes,
I'm going to do it.
I'm going to try one more way.
No, no. Why are you trying to change my mind? I'm not going to change my mind on
I'm
this.
just going to try one more way. Say Hunter Biden and Joe Biden put out a thing that say we're going to sell access to Biden bucks,
He's not
and
saying that he's selling access to. It's not
well,
what
but
he's
he's giving them access. He's giving them access, including people from overseas who are not American citizens. He's
right.
giving them access. He's paying them. If Joe Biden and Hunter Biden said, "We're going to meet 200 people from around the world, basically giving us millions of dollars, and we're going to spend time with them, and make a lot of money off of it."
Oh gosh, Hunter
Would
did
you?
that all the time with the when
Right. And what did you
Biden
say?
was the VP.
What did
Look,
you
I
say?
don't love it,
What did you
but
say when he
if
did
it's
it,
up to,
Mercedes? What
I
did you
don't love
say?
it.
Right.
But
So,
if the
yeah.
president legally can do it, then he should let him do it if he wants to do it. I would
Okay.
not advise to do it
I'm
legally.
gonna take I don't love it and say no further questions, Your Honor.
It's because you're stressing me out. So of course, what do I have to say then?
Mercedes,
I'm gonna have to
Mercedes.
become like Marco Rubio and
Yeah.
push back like he did on Chris Van Hollen.
Mercedes, I'm just here to call balls and strikes, and he shouldn't be doing this. He just shouldn't.
It does open him to legal scrutiny that then you could have a attorney general from one of the blue states go after him. I mean, that
Yeah,
is a possibility. Like
but
if you
also,
would
I
weigh
mean,
all the possibilities, it
when
could create legal headaches for him.
when the Clintons let donors sleep in the Lincoln bedroom, Republicans rightly said it doesn't look right.
Right. Yeah.
It's
They said
just
a lot more than just that.
yeah. All right, Dan, just pile on,
Yeah,
weigh in,
all
and
right.
we'll move on.
I'll just take one swing at the plate here. I mean, look, crypto is perhaps the most speculative asset in the world, right? Fine, it's a business, it's legit, whether I like it or not. If the next Democratic president, if Pete Buttigieg says, I am going to, December 10th, before he is inaugurated, Christian and I are going to start a Buttigieg meme coin. We are then going to host at the White House all those who bought the 20 biggest investors in the asset on the open market. Attorney General Kamala Harris said it's good. So we're all good, right? I look forward to all of my friends in conservative media saying this is a great move for capitalism and good for Pete Buttigieg, who was called many names by J.D. Vance during the campaign. It's great. Make presidents rich again. It's awesome.
All right. Last topic. Maha, President Bobby Kennedy doing an event today. Um, it'll always be the case with Bobby Kennedy. Maha will have extraordinary appeal to tens of millions of Americans. He will run an operation as organized as a kindergarten soccer game, and he will say things that are controversial on topics like vaccines that will have his critics very upset. So, Dan, on this day of the event the president's doing with Secretary Kennedy, what is the status of Bobby Kennedy's stewardship of HHS?
I'm going to be really curious because if he, I think he will talk about vaccines, and that obviously rankles a lot of people. But he's also, I think, going to talk about pesticides and ultra processed foods. And he will get, I believe, a lot of agreement from Democrats on that issue. And so, Mark, you have said this for a while. One of the first questions Democrats need to ask themselves when they think about getting out of the wilderness is how do we win back RFK voters? Why is he so popular? How do we win back kind of part of the Bernie Sanders wing of the party that meets with the RFK wing? So I hope the party does not knee jerk and go into the lecturing of vaccines and right and wrong. You can be pro vaccine, but I looked at the broader narrative of Bobby Kennedy. And by the way, I want to see what Republicans say from farm states about pesticides and some other stuff.
He's told them, don't worry.
Great.
He's told them, don't worry.
Bobby
Mercedes, one of the biggest wastes of my tax dollars is when cabinet secretaries hire outside communication consultants and pay them through some contract to give them advice. Because
unless it's Mercedes, then it's a good.
Well, I was going to say, but the one exception would be if Bobby Kennedy hired you. What comms advice would you give to Secretary Kennedy about how to make his stewardship of the department a success in terms of comms?
I think he's been very successful in terms of comms. We saw him yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, in the Senate Health Committee, where he basically, had very targeted words towards Senator Pat Murray, in essence saying, what have you all done in Congress to make America healthier? I mean, when you're talking about the fact that we have the highest death rate, lowest life expectancy, although we're spending the highest when it comes to healthcare per capita, and also we have 42% of Americans with at least two chronic conditions, and high levels of disease rates and obesity rates. Hello, we've got a problem in the US. And, I know in America, it's like, don't let the government get involved, but we need to have these conversations of how we can make our youth healthy. How can we make sure that we help Americans just not having to depend on pharmaceutical drugs for everything, that we get to the bottom of these food issues. And for example, dealing with the dyes and all the, like you mentioned, Dan, the processed food, the highly processed food, it's taking a toll on American health. And quite frankly, for being, one of the highest income countries in the world, and we have these skyrocketing disease rates, it's alarming. And so I think he's done a very good job messaging that. The question will be, putting these steps into action, right? Like that's his thing. Like it is studying, doing the reports, but what else are we going to do in addition to, having these findings come out? What is it going to be? Is it going to be investments in communities? What is it? And I think that's the piece that they're going to need to really get a handle on in the next 3.5 years.
Mark, can I just quickly add a point to
what
Mercedes said, because it's very smart.
Yes,
the Democratic Party
that is very smart.
keeps defending the status quo, right? We're like offended by the change of everything when worldwide being in defense of the status quo has been a losing proposition. Bobby Kennedy is challenging the status quo. To your point, Mercedes, now let's see if he can execute it. But if we dig in to say, you can't make that change, you can't do this, Mercedes, you said it. We've done nothing on any of this, but just like talk and lament. And now here's action. I would hope we'd find a way to marry up with it.
Are you not crediting Michelle Obama's garden at the White House?
It was a good start. It's a good start.
It's a good start.
Okay. All right. Bring in folks now. Again, as always, as you come in, please unmute. Tell us where you are and what's on your mind for Mercedes and Dan. And we'll start with Gil. Gil, welcome and thank you for joining.
Gil, you just need to unmute.
There you go.
I was blocked off by one of the screen things.
There you go.
I wanted to kind of go back to all this cover-up that's been going on with Biden and all the people who somehow didn't know, ranging from Gretchen Whitmer, who says she's way out in Michigan and only saw the president a few times when she's part of the DNC, and you can go on nauseum. All the people who have more or less said they just didn't know, and meanwhile, all the people who are better informed say, well, they all knew, and I think that's more accurate than not. And so, to me, that is a greater threat to our democracy than January 6th
Yeah.
because it's ongoing, it's persistent. And so, to me, all of them have basically perfected the technique of plausible deniability. And the thing that keeps coming back to me as a visual are the three monkeys that hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. So every time one of these people says they didn't know, that's the image that comes up in my
Yeah.
mind. So my concern is that as time goes on, all this will drift away and the deniable plausibility will just kind of fade into the sunset, and all these people will stay in their relative positions and achieve some level of national credibility or maintain the ones they have. And I think there ought to be some way, and I'll use the word branded. This group has to be branded in some permanent way so that we, the average person, have some way to describe it. And I'm old enough to remember when there was the military industrial complex,
Yeah.
and that was used as a way to negatively associate people with an activity that others didn't approve of. And so I would like to submit that something like the political media cabal be created as a way to use a familiar term that people like me and others can say, okay, Jake Tapper, we heard what you said. You're part of the cabal, or so and so, you're part of the cabal.
All right, Gil, I'm gonna stop you there because I think we get the point, and I want to get Dan and then Mercedes in. All I'll say is I've been quite clear. There's no reason to ask Gretchen Whitmer if she knew. Everybody knew. You didn't need to be in private with Joe Biden to know. So I think it's all a little bit of a red herring. Gil, stand by. Dan, reaction to what Gil said.
I mean, I agree with Mark. I mean, one, you just could use your own eyes, common sense, what you saw publicly, but then privately, yes, as you say, Gil, they all knew. It was well talked about in Washington going back to 2020 what was going on. So you're right, they lied, but now they've been caught with their pants down. They're embarrassed. They're humiliated. Like a lot of people in such situations in politics, they're not going to kind of do the mea culpa, although I wonder if somebody actually will to see if they can kind of try to put it behind him or her. Gil, look, both parties sometimes just grin and bear it and try to tell you, up is down, black is white, so to speak, and move forward. But look, we paid a price in 2024 in November. We will probably pay a price going forward. And I can give you some comfort that I'm sure JD Vance and anyone else thinking of running for president in 2028 will bring this up early and often with a catchy nickname, probably provided by your current president. And we'll see if Democrats can move past it.
Mercedes, you got a good idea for branding on this one?
I'm not going to help them brand.
No, I know. I mean,
let me tell you.
Hope Gil brand the cabal.
We branded Let's Go Brandon, and I think we were right. But I think that, look, I think if I would be a Democrat, I'd be so mad at the party. And this is where you kind of had like, and even Kamala Harris, like there should have been a moment where the Biden family should have said, we can't keep doing this. Like for the good of the party and the nation, he steps down. Kamala becomes president. It would have probably given her a better, I still don't think she would have won because I don't think she's presidential material, but it could have maybe boosted her chances. I hate to say it. And you even see Joe Biden in his latest interviews saying, well, I could have won, like if I would have stayed in. They're still holding on. And one of the things that this swampy town and this, both of you, Mark and Dan, that you got to know when it's time to get off the stage. And for Joe Biden, it was clear to all of us, and even to my Democrat friends, that they were like, he's just not there. You go to the meetings, and it's very clear that there's cognitive decline. And the mere fact that they tried to keep propping him up, I think, was just something that is just, even for the country, it's just a betrayal to the country.
Gil, thank you. Bob, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind.
Well, good morning to everyone. I'm calling from Dixon, Illinois, hometown of former President Ronald Reagan. Perhaps some of you know that, but he's kind of a big name around here in Dixon, Illinois. Actually born in Tampico, a small town nearby, and had the treat when the Reagan movie came out last year that Dennis Quaid came to town, and we kind of had a big to do and watched the movie here in the historic theater. So, thanks for letting me on today. I was initially going to talk about Biden. And now you guys have brought up crypto, and that makes me think because I've been in Bitcoin since prior to 2015. So I guess we could go any direction you'd want to go. It was less than $1,000 then, and it's I
Did
believe
you hold any?
Oh yeah, sure do.
All right, dinner's on you.
Still a whole lot, yeah, and several other things. I won't bore you with all those details, but I just wanted you to know that I may be a little more crypto proficient than a lot of people, just judging by some of the ones that I interacted with in the chat. But getting back to Biden for a second, here's my question. And whenever we have a major problem, this is what I'm usually looking at. And maybe this is from some of my business opportunities and stuff, but like, did we learn anything? Have we fixed anything? Is the media going to do anything differently the next time we're faced with this problem? I mean, I think we learned that the 25th Amendment doesn't really work if the people in charge don't want it to. And I think back to like, say, something like COVID that mysteriously just seems to have been swept under the rug now, and there's no action to my knowledge against China or anything. But I mean, the worst thing to have in a big pandemic like that would be to have it and not learn anything for the next time. And I fear desperately that we're not learning anything. And I fear, and this is not a shot at the Democratic Party, I think that they just happen to be the party that had a diminished candidate and kind of had to roll with it. But so that's really my question: is has the media learned anything? Have these parties learned anything, or are we just stuck with people selfishly doing what they perceive as in their interests and screw everybody else?
Bob, thank you. Mercedes.
Have the parties learned anything? Oh my, they're so flawed, all of them. I think when it comes to Joe Biden, I think they're at a point that they still, the Democrats, and I'd love to get Dan's opinion on this, I feel like they still haven't really found their messaging, quite frankly. Their messaging is all over the place. When they're going off, like Senator Chris Van Hollen down to El Salvador to have a margarita with the Maryland man, it's just not a good look. It's not where the American people are. When they're still defending biological males in being able to go into girls' locker rooms, not a good look. It's not where the American people are. So are they listening to the American people? Are they trying to find their way? I think you have, potential candidates like a Wes Moore, governor from Maryland, who I think is trying to find that kind of patriotic working class message that was part of the Democrat Party. I think on the Republican Party side, what you have is a very emboldened President Trump, who knows exactly where he is on his messaging. At this point, he's like, look, these are my last 4 years. I'm going to move fast. And so he is, and Mark, you know this, he's dominating the news cycle. I mean, we can't even keep up. It is 3 to 4 meetings a day. He's changing how we work with, for example, the Middle East countries, a whole new way of foreign diplomacy, which is that of commerce, economics versus, guns and weapons, like truly. And even his diplomacy with like the South African president, just calling them all out, out in public and bringing awareness to these issues of what the white farmers are facing in South Africa. He is emboldened. He is moving forward quickly, and he really has defined the Republican message moving into the midterm elections. A question will be: is the economy going to continue to improve? And if it does, that help bolster the Republican Party to maintain the House and the Senate?
Dan.
I think the Democratic Party has not found a way to talk about this. They hope it goes away. I wish they would say in public what they say in private, which is WTF, and just use common sense. I do think for 2028, they all know they're going to have to address this. And I think the winning candidate is going to probably be the most forward and blunt and just say we screwed up. Has the media and everything learned about it? I don't know. And I say this not to be snarky. Donald Trump is an old president. Right now, to Mercedes' point, he is front foot. He is action. He just, oozes piss and vinegar, right? He does. What if in 3 years he starts kind of getting a little glassy eyed and everything? Look, it's going to be hard for us Democrats to kind of call him out, right? Because everyone's going to hold the mirror up and say, what about Joe Biden? But would the Republican Party, would, the media, like, we will find out. I think broader within the party, watch the primaries coming up. Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, Jim Clyburn, Maxine Waters, and there's about 25 members of the Democratic caucus, many of whom are in leadership, who are in their 80s, who have had health issues, who are clearly slowing down. Nancy obviously stepped down, but she's still a pretty dominant figure there. Watch primaries. I think you're going to hear it's time for the torch to be passed. Period. I have no more agenda.
Yeah.
Bob, could you see any action being taken to try to tweak the 25th Amendment, or is that just a dream on my part?
I was talking to somebody the other day about this. If I were a Democrat, like, I love that Trump does stuff like the McDonald's stunt, and like, he's so good at just coming up with something that like gets in the headlines and so easy for all of us to remember, right? Why not come out and say, we have a minimum age, we should have a maximum age? Just say, who knows if it's ever going to pass? But be the person who says, I'm going to call a spade. This is nonsense. We shouldn't have 85-year-olds running the country.
Bob, let me ask you a crypto question. What are the folks having dinner with the president tonight getting for their money?
Probably.
I've got to be honest with you here, Mark, that I haven't looked into it that deeply that I would necessarily know all the machinations behind the scenes. I agree that it's a bad look. I think I posted in the chat a little while ago, being kind of considering myself a crypto guy, I'd have preferred he not wandered into these waters at all personally.
So you agree with Mercedes?
I agree that he shouldn't. I don't know if it's above my pay grade to say if it's illegal or not, but it's a bad look, and I wish it wasn't going on.
All right, Bob, as long as we have you, I want you to just put your analyst hat on. Don't be colored by your own political views. On a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being no chance and 10 being mortal lock, how likely is it J.B. Pritzker will ever be president of the United States?
0.
0. That's on the low end.
J.B. Pritzker in the state of Illinois, where I live, there was an article I read not too long ago about only 30% of fourth graders in Illinois are reading at proficiency level.
Yeah.
Mind you, not outstanding, proficiency. That's a scandal, and this man's busy worrying about being president. I don't see it ever happening.
It's one of the craziest things about politics, Bob, because a lot of smart people I know in Illinois and around the country agree with you that it's 0. And yet he's touted as one of the leading prospects, and he himself seems to think he's got a pretty good chance to be president. And that's why they play the game, Bob. Just like last night's Pacers-Knicks game. There was no reason to play past the end of the fourth quarter, and yet they chose to.
I have been wrong before too, just not about Bitcoin.
All right. If J.B. Pritzker gets elected president, will you sit with me at the inauguration?
Oh gosh.
Well, I don't know how I can turn that down.
All right, Bob.
Dan agrees with that one.
Bob,
it's
thank
not happening.
Thank you, Bob.
That is a family with a lot of investments. So I'm sure everyone will be very happy with that.
Yeah. All right, everybody.
I don't see it, but
everybody make a tonal change, because here comes Haley, who, for those of you who don't know, is a dual American-Israeli citizen, and I'm sure has got lots to say on reflection about the tragic events of yesterday. Haley, welcome in. Thank you for joining. What are your thoughts?
Thank you for bringing me in. I almost wish I didn't have to come in so often. I'm just heartbroken this morning. I mean, I read that this couple was just about to get engaged in Israel next week. I mean, I've cried this morning for sure. But I'm honestly I'm so exhausted, because I feel like, and this I credit to 2A 100%. I am definitely one of the Israeli Americans who have opened their minds and tried to look at both sides of this issue with a much more open mind than, let's say, some of my Israeli family, because just that's who they are. These types of events kind of make me just it brings me back to the tribalness of I have to defend my side no matter what, especially when they're doing this in the name of Free Palestine, which I know it's all ignorance, because if they really knew what was going on, this wouldn't even be happening. So my initial like thought was obviously shock and surprise that this could happen in America. Honestly, I was expecting, this happens in Europe all the time, unfortunately, and even in Canada, I've heard of horrible instances, but in America and Washington, D.C., shocked me, but it didn't surprise me, as Megyn Kelly likes to say these days. Like, it's shocking, but not surprising. And I just think that Israel's PR war that they're waging and the fact that they're losing is actually killing people. And I think that and I don't know the instance, but it's just a gut feeling that this person truly has no idea what is happening and is just listening to the lies being told about the only democracy in the Middle East and decided to take matters into his own hands today. And I think it's a trend that's terrifying, terrifying to us Jews here in America.
Haley, thank you. Grateful to you. Mercedes, I'm assuming the president's going to talk today about this, right? On camera?
Yeah, I'm sure the president will be asked about it, or he will address it when he does one of his first of many events that he does during the day. So, we'll see. I do think it's going to be interesting if they're going to not only will there be the investigation piece of this, but what other actions the administration is going to look into in combating anti-Semitism here in America. That's something that they've made it as a top priority for the administration. And then again, the second question being, will there be a conversation? For example, I can assume the president might call Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and obviously I could see the families, him calling the families as well of these Israeli embassy staffers. So you could see a series of things that the president will do. The bigger question will be, what are they going to do from an administration standpoint to really get a handle on this violence that we're seeing happening? Obviously, this latest one, we're going from student protest to innocent lives being taken. We're in a whole different level in terms of this battle in combating anti-Semitism in America.
Yeah, amen to that. All right. Again, as Two-Way grows, it will become increasingly difficult for you to keep track of all our programs. Being honest, sometimes it's a little hard for me to keep track of all our programs. So let's review. Today at 6 o'clock Eastern Time, a regular episode of Two-Way Tonight. But oh no, not a regular episode, because it will feature the introduction. My guest for the full hour is what I call the Fabulous Five, Dan's colleagues on our new program.
I am their colleague.
Debut next week, the group chat. All right, and you see them there, and you may not be familiar with all of them. Maybe you are. Emma Jo Morris. I'll go left to right. Emma Jo Morris and Nina Turner, Batya Ungar Sargon, Robbie Suave, and Dan are part of a new program that will debut next week. But again, they're joining me tonight at 4. They'll be on Thursdays at 4 p.m. starting next week, and it's going to be a very two-way show. The same kind of conversation we have here: respectful, dignified, comprehensive, serious, sophisticated, accessible, and as always, your participation encouraged. So the group chat, Fabulous Five, will join me tonight. Then at 7 o'clock tonight, Michael Moynihan, The Moynihan Report, documentary filmmaker Nick August Perna, director of a film that's done extraordinarily well on Netflix, Tell Them You Love Me, tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And as I said, later today, you'll see on YouTube and where you get your podcasts, the new edition of Next Up, my program on the Megyn Kelly Network. I'll talk to Megyn Kelly as my guest, as well as Senator Tom Cotton about the shooting in Washington and about how we will solve the Russia-Ukraine problem here in America, and about the end of woke. And then I'll have a little thing to say about my prescription for how my colleagues in the media can heal themselves and maybe restore the needed credibility in this country. Mercedes, we couldn't be happier you joined us, and I know you've had a long day of broadcasting already, so please go rest. And
thank you all for having me. It was so fun, and oh my goodness, I love everyone on. This is just wonderful. Great conversation.
Well, thank you. We hope you'll come back.
You make me a better person, Mark, every day. That's all
Mercedes, thank you. I feel the same about you. And tomorrow, we won't have Mercedes, unfortunately. We won't have Larry, unfortunately, but Ambassador Rick Grinnell.
That's a get.
Of the Kennedy Center and all sorts of things. Ambassador Grinnell will be here, and we'll talk about cats and Les Mis and all sorts of things. And Dan, I'll see you at 6 tonight, and we'll go to game. Well, if anybody wants to give Dan and me tickets for the game 2 of the Knicks because
Oh,
presumably,
boy,
Oh
you
no,
boys.
I have my wife's
Presumably-
birthday dinner tomorrow night. I am
Oh.
not watching the Knicks. I am
Okay.
focused on celebrating my wife.
all right. Well,
Oh,
then,
that's sweet.
then, as we say, I just need one. So if anybody wants to take me to the game tomorrow,
Okay.
they won game 6 against the Celtics when I went. So I am like, along with Walt Frazier, the good luck charm of the team. So
Fly
anyway,
to Indiana. Come on.
thank you all for watching. Very grateful to you. I'll see you tonight at 6 on Two Way Tonight. Mercedes, thank you.
Thank you.